All right, everybody, welcome back to the Forward Podcast. I'm your host, Lance Armstrong. I know these are few and far between this day and age. It's a little crazy. Also in this day and age, the Zoom day and age, I really have no excuse. My guest today, I'm the host. My guest today is Dhani Jones. I've known Dhani, 10 plus years. Started at the University of Michigan as a linebacker, went on to play in the league for 10 years. But has become so much more than that in the African-American community. He's a true leader in every sense of the word. He's parlayed his success on the football field to so many other things, whether it's the financial markets, television career. And he's just one of the most charitable sumbitches you'll ever know. It was a real honor to have him on. Clearly a lot to talk about in this day and age with everything going on. Right on the heels of a global pandemic, which we're still dealing with. But the sort of discussion around race in our country, especially something near and dear to his heart. His words, I got to tell you, this is one of my longer ones, maybe the longest one I've ever done, and I did not want to stop. So if you're just listening right now, deciding if you listen, this was maybe the coolest 90 minutes I've had in a long time. So give it a listen. Before we jump to Dhani, our friends over at The Move, which I guess is myself and George and JB, got a couple things cooked up. Obviously, like all global sporting events, everything on hold. The cycling season has been put on hold. The Tour is still, the Tour de France is still tracking for late August to run for 3 weeks into September through September 20th. Obviously, at The Move, we will cover it daily like we do every July. We're really looking forward to that. We're getting a little bored not covering anything. So we are in conjunction with PowerDot, are going to do 7 shows in the month of July. So your typical Tour de France month. We would love to hear from you all which 7 stages. We're sort of tentatively thinking about titling them Postal's 7 Best Days. If you have any ideas, shoot us a note. Just the year, the stage. If you can't think of that, then just give us some example. We'll figure it out. Shoot us a note at the move at wedo.team. I'm going to cover 7 of those. Again, the full crew from The Move. And, fingers crossed that the tour rolls out. So let's get to Dhani. I hope everybody's hanging in there. This is just weird, fucked up times. And what I always tend to do in situations like this is just kind of look around my house. As you know, it's not easy to watch cable news and feel normal walking around. So I just sort of look around and see all my kids and embrace them, see Anna, embrace her, see my bike every morning and embrace that, the work that I'm doing here or at Next or whatever, just embrace that. And you'll hear Dhani. We talked a lot about it. Again, we obviously spoke a lot with Dan Buettner about this idea of a reset. Dhani's point, I'll just spoil part of it, is that with everything going on in the African-American community, relations between blacks and whites, police, excessive force or whatever, that coming on the heels of everybody being stuck at home, is that the catalyst or is that the difference between other episodes of this in our country? And so just listen in. He speaks to it better than anybody perhaps I've ever heard. And at the end, we have a bit of a personal moment. I just know it. I count him as truly a personal and loyal friend. And so it was cool just to hang, talk about these things that are sensitive, and try to get some understanding. And he also, I'd say, he talks about a YouTube clip during the podcast that he encourages all of us to watch. I ended up watching it last night with all my kids about inequality in class and the race to get to the finish line. You'll hear all about it, and then you'll be able to go watch it. And if you have kids and you don't sit with your kids and watch it, especially a all of you other lucky white people like myself, then it's an injustice. And so just give it a look-see and keep the Kleenex close, because you were mopping me out when it was done. So thanks for tuning in. I will do a better job of recording more of these. And forward, never straight. Here's Dhani Jones. My man, Dhani Jones. How you doing, man?
What's up? I'm hanging in here. I'm at home like everybody else. Trying to get to know my own house.
Well, it's yeah. I mean, we talk about it all the time on the show. It's kind of the reset, but that can mean a lot of things. I mean, you could sort of double down on your health. You could purge all the bullshit in your closet or your bookshelf or whatever. I'm like, I haven't touched this in 2 years. Okay, gone. Like, just get rid of shit.
Just get rid of it.
Yeah.
I've gone through several different phases of this change being at home. I think back, I started playing football when I was in high school. And when you get to college, where I went to Michigan, I was on the road, right? So, your first year in college, the fall comes around and all of a sudden now you're just taking off to go to, a game in a different state. So from college and then to pro, when I started on the Giants, my rookie year, and then going to Philly and then going to Cincinnati, been on the road. And then from there to TV, and I know we'll talk about a lot of different things. You're on the road again. And then all of a sudden, you're in business. And then I'm having meetings and going to talk to different people on the road again. And now I'm sitting at home over the last 70 some odd days trying to figure out, okay, now that I'm home, what do I need to do in order to sort of re-acclimatize myself to this environment that I call my house? What are the doors and what are the conversations and what are the aspects of my life, to your point, that I need to sort of adjust the course, because the world is not going to be the same once we get out of this coronavirus pandemic time period in our life. So how are we going to be different when we come out of it as well?
Right. And it's a great question. I mean, I think this is a tectonic shift for our society, even the global society. And I'm not sure, and again, something we talk about a lot on here, the mental health fallout from all this. I don't, time will tell. It's like you were talking about, 70 some odd days at home. You got dropped in another planet. You're used to living out of a suitcase, and all of a sudden, oh man, I got to hang out here. What? Another day of this? Like but
here's the thing. I love it. I've come to, once I've gotten over the sort of the anxiety of not going anywhere, once I've worked through sort of the balance of finding work and family, and once I've identified what I need to get better at, I come to this place of stasis where now I can kind of work on it, and I'm okay with it, right? My favorite seat, and a lot of people know this, my favorite seat in the world is 3D, right? I'm on Delta Airlines all the time, flying back and forth. You talk to Ed Bastian, which, a lot of people probably have met on airplanes. They will tell you that's the seat that I live in. But now being at home, you're constantly in this state. Since you've been moving all the time, now you're in this constant state of sitting still. And I think it's, something that I've actually enjoyed, really starting to get to know myself a little bit better.
Well, at least you're not in 23D. You know what I mean?
Well, sometimes I start up at 23D and I happen to get moved up because of the fact that I just travel a lot. So I must say I'm just fortunate enough to be able to do that, or maybe not.
You're in Detroit now. Where are you? Where are you? Because I can see you're sitting in your home office. Is that Detroit? Where is that?
Yeah. So recently we moved from Cincinnati, Ohio. We moved up to right outside Detroit in a town called Bloomfield. We looked at Detroit. And we looked at a lot of different parts, and the city is growing amazing. But we ended up moving to Bloomfield, and large in part because there's a lot of people that I knew that lived in the area. And I think it's always important when you move from one town to the next, or when you look at one opportunity and move to the next, you always have to have that community of people around you in order to make it feel as close to home or the new home as possible.
Right. And I knew you went to Michigan, played in Michigan, then went to the league, but I didn't know you grew up in Michigan. When you told me you moved to Detroit, we were talking, I don't know, 6 months ago, and you're like, yeah, I'm living in Detroit. I said, shit, he's crazy. What? And I said, why? You know, we can get into that too, but I was like, but I guess having said all, that's your home. So that, you know, it's like, I mean, I wouldn't move back to Plano.
Yeah.
Personally. But that's home. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I would say in a lot of ways, a lot of places for me have been home because I've been a military child. Right. And my mother and my father were both active duty Navy. My father, a commander, my mother, lieutenant commander. And so we've lived in a lot of different places. I went to high school in Maryland. And so we've always had this perspective that, you know, wherever you go is a new opportunity for you to learn not only about that culture and about that city, but ultimately about yourself. And then, you know, one of the fortunate things that happens as a result of that, when you get to be older, no matter where you end up, you always feel as close to home as possible, right? You already have those tools that have been sort of tucked really nicely into your belt, and you just access that tool belt when you come back either home or to a new neighborhood. And so coming back to Michigan, we settled in nicely and just started to look around. And yeah, you're right. Detroit, you know, Detroit is a city that is in the midst of its own rebuilding.
Comeback,
right? Yeah, I'd say comeback. I'd say rebuilding, and it's a city that we all need. Right. It's a city that's made a significant difference in the history of America. Right. You know, to simply put, automotive without Detroit. Sure. Where would America be without cars? Right. And all of that set a precedent and set a stage for, you know, our industrial revolution. And we need Detroit, which has been a center of that for so long, to continue to be that. And I think over the last, let's just say, 10 years, and now moving into the next phase of the 10 years, it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves with all the new technology that's coming out. The electrification of vehicles, which I think is a great opportunity to getting investments in. And then also that merge into the world of aerospace when cars start to lift off the ground. Right. And then as you think about the world of telecommunication, how do you piece it all together? Because even as we're sitting right now on the Zoom call, you know, how long ago was it that Zoom didn't exist? And what will Zoom evolve to be in the future? And what will it all look like? You know, can you imagine, can you imagine driving down the street and all of a sudden the electric car becomes your home office, and then all the notion of connectivity that occurs between the two automobiles, where we could just you could be in Texas on your way to Florida because you decided just to take the car, and I'm doing the same thing going to New York, but then all of a sudden we don't need to drive the car, we can just have a conversation. So the elements of productivity, I mean, there's just so many things you can think about that. And I believe the responsibility comes back to Detroit in the Midwest, where there is amazing talent that exists right here that has built Detroit and will continue to build the Midwest as well as the future of America. Right,
a little bit like the Jetsons. Just
we hope so.
Oh, I hope so too. I mean, you know, I go between Aspen and Austin, traffic in both places. I mean, this little town, you know, people just they got to wait to the light. People start freaking out. I'm like, don't worry, pretty soon you'll just drone over there. It'll be, yeah, exactly.
You just lift up and hover over, and then it'll be a whole different type of traffic.
And you won't, and we don't have to trust certain morons to fly the drone. It'll fly itself, which is even better.
Exactly.
So, Dhani, I want to start with, and I just dig it into what I do when I do these. I mean, I know you quite well, but it just takes a day of just digging in and learning, and figuring out where I'm going to go as a host or interviewer. And you've led a fascinating life. But I want to start, and I'd be remiss if we didn't start, just trying to understand America now, where we sit today, and your perspective, obviously, as an athlete, as a prominent Black man, a brilliant man. We got ourselves in a mess, and my belief is, we didn't just figure out this was a mess a week ago in Minneapolis. Like this has been a mess, and I don't know how we work ourselves. I don't know how we get out of it, AKA progress. All I know is that I just, the promises, it gets so political, as you can imagine and understand. And I obviously I would get very frustrated with the political back and forth, and all I care about is progress. I don't need somebody having a press conference. I don't need somebody. All I want is progress. Whether it's taking down statues, changing names, whatever it is, that's great. But let's actually make progress. And so we've seen a few of these. I mean, God, somebody's telling me about this new Rodney King documentary on Netflix. Brother, that was 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about that. That's all. You turn on cable news at night, that's all they talk about. 30 years is a long time. Most would argue there's been little, if any, progress. And so I'm like, this is stupid. Like, at some point we got to put the boots on the ground and make a difference. And so, and of course there's pockets, right? I mean, whether it's Colorado, Texas, Michigan, California, Florida, whatever, New York, there's places, there's pockets. And so, just curious to get your thoughts on where we sit today. I guess from a high level, then we can dig back in or dig in and try to understand, as I said, how we make progress.
You've covered so many bases, and you've asked so many questions, and you referred to so much. And the most important piece of that is time, right? And we started off the conversation. You asked me, where I was. I'm sitting at home. And there's so many people that are sitting at home. Okay. And in the same way that, I can think about over the past 22 years of my life being on the road, so much of life just passes you by. It's very similar to, like, if you drive to work, then all of a sudden you ride your bike to work, and then all of a sudden you walk to work. You see things at a different pace, and you start to notice things in a different cadence. And right now, everybody is sitting and watching, and you're forced to listen, and you're forced to learn, and you're forced to go through yourself to actually ask yourself the question, what's happening in this world, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we could have ever arrived at this moment unless it be for the unfortunate pandemic, unless it be for the unfortunate financial crisis and the amount of unemployment. If it not for technology and the horrific video of George Floyd with the officer's knee on his neck, we're forced to evaluate the true moral character of who we are as people, but ultimately who we are as American citizens. And through that, revisit our own history. Mm-hmm. And I've had so many people reach out to me. It's amazing. And some of my friends who have had people reach out to them, they get mad and they say, how come you haven't called me ever before? But it takes this moment to call me, and they get upset. And I always say, wait, they're calling you. That means something in them. It takes a lot to call someone nowadays. I mean, you can just text someone, you can tweet at someone, you can leave a message on Instagram, you can do a lot of other things. But the fact to call someone and ask someone how they're doing, now it's a responsibility to educate. And now it's a responsibility to explain. And now it's an opportunity to bring people closer. Because to be honest, where we are now and where we need to be in the future, and yes, 30 years ago, there was a lot of things that happened, right? I remember Rodney King. I mean, I remember so many different events. We have a lot further we need to travel. And hopefully with this moment, we'll get there in a shorter amount of time, but the steps still need to be taken. President Barack Obama did a town hall meeting, and he said, we need those that are on the front line protesting. We need those that are on the front lines, raising their fists and raising their voice and lifting each other up. But we also need the follow-up and the follow-through. And that's where the scales are still unbalanced. And that's where the community still has a responsibility to find their place if they want the world to shift in a more positive way, so that the statues might fall and that the course may be corrected, so that the future of our children can sit in a more peaceful place, and my kids don't have to hide behind the car when a police officer drives past, right? When I don't have to worry about my son driving down the street and not using his blinker and getting pulled over. I don't have to worry about myself when I'm just walking through my own neighborhood and wondering if I'm going to be called into question as I have been in the past. I remember when I grew up, I pulled into the back of the pizza place where I was working at the time, and one cop came in, and then all of a sudden I heard this whole slew of police come in my direction, and it ended up being 6 officers. And it was a simple, they had ran my tags, they ran my name, which, come on, how many people do you know that are Dhani Jones? There's only Dhani Harrison out there, right?
I only know one. I don't even know Dhani Harrison. I never heard of Dhani anybody.
So, you know what I mean? They ran my tags and they ran my license, and they thought that I was, it's a little blurry right now, but either they thought I had, somebody had a name that, they were calling the system, but thank goodness, the owner of the pizza place came out and he said, no, he's working with me. You never know how a situation like that might have gone. I mean, Leland, his name is escaping me right now. The astronaut, his first name's Leland. Leland Melvin, or Melvin Leland.
That's okay.
Melvin Leland?
People can Google it.
Yeah. I want to make sure I get his name right, because he was a football player, and he plays the piano, and he's an astronaut. And I know you're looking it up, so I'm appreciate that.
Yep.
Because he'd be upset, and hopefully he hears this.
Leland Melvin,
and he's Leland Melvin, astronaut, NFL player, and pianist. And he told a story on Instagram about how when he was younger, he was in a car with a young lady, and I remember it kind of, that he said that the girl was removed from the car and he got pulled over by an officer. The girl was taken out of the car into the officer's car. And the officer said, if you claim that you're being raped, or you claim that, there's an issue, I can arrest him. And he was trying to blackmail her in order to get him.
Right.
And think about all those situations and all those people, which I've been in situations not to that level, where they may not have been the astronauts that they are today, so that we can look and say, here's an African-American athlete, NFL player, pianist, who's now been in space, right, to represent in a way that other people might follow. So there's a lot to unpack through all that. Most important piece is that now we're having this conversation at a visceral level where we can all, because of the fact that we're sitting at home and we're not moving so fast, acknowledge what we're actually feeling. And you should never, ever have to apologize for how you feel, because ultimately feelings change the world. People can say things, but it's a way that you say things. People can do things, but it's a way that you do things. People can know things, but it's a way that you communicate that knowledge and the intimacy between people that ultimately say, oh, I understand where you're coming from. I may not have been through what you've been through, but I get it. And now I'm going to walk hand in hand with you on the front lines, whether it's in Detroit, whether it's in Atlanta, whether it's in Washington, D.C. Oh, by the way, in Black Lives Matter Plaza, which is amazing, right in front of the White House. And I can do something about it.
Well, it's an interesting thought and not one that I've considered, because I what I said is, to me, it's all about progress. But on the back of quarantine, on the back of a global pandemic, having really forced us to all stay at home and observe and think and listen and reset. Again, time tells on all of these things. Perhaps that's, there was no quarantine the 70 days before Rodney King. There was no quarantine 70 days before. Look, there's been a dozen of these episodes in 30 years that I've observed. But and fingers crossed that is the dynamic, right? That changes everything. Think about, when I think, and I see this thing, you brought up Barack Obama. We have an African-American president. 30 years ago, you never thought that happened. You see you talked about Leland Melvin. He's in space. You see all these other, all of these things. I read in the New York Times today that, I grew up eating pancakes or waffles, and my favorite syrup was Aunt Jemima. Gone. So all these things, which I support, but what I would really support is change. And so I don't want to look back, and I know you don't, and nobody should. I know there's fools out there that do, but I don't want to look back in a year and go, well, man, that was a cool podcast with Dhani, and that was, Aunt Jemima's gone, and Barack was president, and the shit doesn't change. That's just stupid. But I love this idea, and I want to spend, and I haven't thought about it. I'm not very sharp, so I'm glad you brought it up. But I want to think more about this idea that they have our captive attention. And boy, that could be the X factor.
It's
here's the thing. The true factor is it's long overdue. Let's not forget that.
No, but everything in life has to find the right time. Everything is measured by momentum and, by a moment. And oftentimes the momentum is too great that you overlook the moment. Oftentimes the moment is too great and you don't have enough momentum. But it's the perfect moment, and with all the momentum, that creates the ultimate change. And so we won't be sitting here a year from now saying that nothing has happened and progress hasn't been made, because you do have the brands of this world acknowledging where they have made errors. You do have the schools that are acknowledging that they too represent part of our past that we need to still work through and have more discussions. And you have Reed Hastings that's committing, the largest gift to the, historically Black universities, which include Morehouse and Spelman. You have PayPal that's that's going to invest close to $500 million in minority-owned companies. You have WPP deciding not to work with any groups that don't also work alongside with diverse leaders in business. So, if anything, our conversation will continue to amplify that. I don't claim to have the loudest voice, because there's a lot of people out there who do. You have a loud voice, and the fact that you're willing to talk about that means a lot. I appreciate that. It gives other people an opportunity to hear multiple perspectives so that we can collectively, through our diverse way of thinking, identify the multiple ways that we need to change, because it's also not one thing we need to change. It's 1,000 things we need to change, and they don't need to be changed in one way. They too need to be changed in 1,000 ways. And that's why that moment and the momentum have to be perfect in that time, albeit it's terrible circumstances. And every day I wake up and I look into the news, and it's just, it's sad. And it's something that I've had to live with my entire life. Right. And then there's 2 people, and there's open cases who have been hung in California, and other young lady that was also hung in. And I don't know what the situations are, but you have technology bringing to light terrible circumstances, horrific images of people who have lost their lives, and it's dozens, it's thousands, and that of which we haven't seen. Did you see the police officer that pointed his gun in front of 6 young Black kids? So you have those instances. You have a woman that's in her house that the door gets busted down.
Yeah.
And George Floyd with the knee on his neck. And I think a lot of people, as I keep saying, you now feel it, and now you're saying, and now you're doing, and all the things that people are doing cumulatively together, acknowledge and move that towards a place in life where it will be different in a year from now.
Well, let's hope. And I'm optimistic. You know, I've got a lot of kids, as you know, but I have a son who plays football at Rice, which is not quite the level of Michigan, but that's another thing. Then I got twin girls that just graduated high school, which obviously they didn't have. They had a non-traditional graduation, and even then we weren't sure what that was going to look and feel like and flow like. So one of the, maybe all the networks aired it. I don't know. They had a sort of a high school graduation on TV, right? I forget what network it was on, but that's not the point. The point is, and I was here in Colorado with Grace, who went to graduate at Aspen High this year. I said, let's watch this. You know, I knew who the commencement speaker was going to be, but the show starts, and who comes out? Who opens the show? LeBron James. Who's the commencement speaker? Barack Obama. I mean, to open the show, I mean, it wasn't Tom Brady. It wasn't George Clooney. It wasn't Brad Pitt. It wasn't, I don't know, whoever. No, it was LeBron James, black man. Mm-hmm. And who did those kids, because the kids apparently got to vote. Thank God they didn't vote for you-know-who, but they voted for Barack Obama to give the commencement. So to me, it's like, all right, you are speaking to, and I don't know how many 12th graders there are in America, but there's a lot. And that's who they want. So that's a big damn deal to me. And I was so damn proud. And I don't really know LeBron, and I don't know President Obama, but boy, it wasn't like any 12th grade kids like, why is LeBron opening the show? I mean, they were like, hell yeah, LeBron's here. The king. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I think the mentality of our youth hopefully will save our world.
Oh boy, on so many levels.
And their optimism, but their vigilance towards making things better. And I think a lot of it, I talk about sort of that moment and the momentum and sitting at home, but just as much as that access to technology and that access to understanding what's actually happening in the world. And what I also love about the young people is that they acknowledge those that have that voice and they lift them up. They don't try to hold them back. And that's this new culture that we're living in, where people are able to hear from those that have that perspective and amplify it. We used to live in Cincinnati, Ohio, and our neighbor's daughter, who's 18, I just got a text message. She was at an event in the city of Cincinnati where she got up in front of everybody and just talked about, the nature of, police and what the government needs to do. And, it's like, so the voices are not stifled, right? It wasn't too long. Like everybody in this world, everybody was stifled. Everybody was scared to step up and say something. And now your voice is the most important thing that you have. And technology is the most important amplification. And we'll just let the world be the judge of it. And let all the world truly be, as Shakespeare says, the stage, right, and all the men and women that are in it. I don't, it's like, I didn't even think about Shakespeare. You have your, entrance and exits, but right now we're all sitting in the room and nobody's leaving. Nobody's leaving. Everybody wants to be able to talk and be able to say something. And now we need to be able to listen, and we need people to be able to take notes, and we need to be able for those to be able to put into action the things that people are saying. We need to have tangible goals in order to be able to have tangible outcomes. And I think that's also a very important piece. And we're starting to see that, and people started to demand certain things and then to be able to negotiate. So I appreciate the young people for being able to keep us in this room together and, lock the door. And there's no entrance and exits. It's only right now, and we're all in it.
Right. And
I just brought Shakespeare and Lean on Me into one explanation. I didn't even think about that. And
the kid from Plano got super lost when you started talking about Shakespeare, but I follow that. When I think of my children, I don't. And I'm biased, obviously. I mean, they don't, all of them, I don't think they see a difference. I think, as you said, they see actors in the play and I don't trust politics. I don't trust politicians. And I think we can have a very large conversation. But that's important. Perhaps that pressures the leaders of this country. But if that doesn't affect change and and as a group, they don't have the courage to do that, that's where I start to worry, because you don't want to keep having this dialogue. I don't want to, rational people don't want to. And so, boy.
But here's the thing. We will have this conversation until things are fixed.
Of course.
And we will continue having this conversation as we create more and more momentum. And so, like I talked to another one of my friends who's an executive over in Apple, and he always says, I'm so tired of talking. I have another friend that's executive at a big bank. He's like, I'm tired of being put up on the stage so that I have to make the statement. And I have another friend that's in a really strong organization, and he says, I always have to lead these calls. And I keep telling them, you better keep leading those calls, and you better keep standing on those stages, and you better keep making those statements.
Yeah.
Because this is in a moment in time where people are actually listening and they're doing, and the young people are following, and they're not at a commencement address, sending notes to their friends. They're paying attention. And the new generation of young people are listening intently, and they're following. Another thing that's interesting about, well, not interesting, I'd say a silver lining in this moment is that your kids, you spend more time with your kids probably now than ever before.
Absolutely.
And they'll they'll remember all of these moments. They'll remember every single day when you wake up and dad goes downstairs and he goes into the office and works, but he goes outside and he plays for a little bit and then he goes back in and does a little bit more work. They'll remember, there's tense moments because everybody gets cabin fever. Everybody wants to I got to get out. I got to go outside. Matter of fact, my son and I, we play golf in the backyard with tennis ball. So we treat our house like a golf course. And but they'll remember these moments. And my friend said the kids will, out of everything, the kids will remember how you acted during these moments right now. And it'll make an impact on their life and your life because you'll never ever see potentially a time of 70, 80 days when you've been sitting at home and you wake up and you go nowhere. Yep. So hopefully you build that bond and you build that new relationship. But everybody is building a new relationship. I think that's relevant to the world. Everybody's building a new relationship with their neighbor. They're building new relationships with their friends. Now you just have to be open and willing. You have to sort of, instead of, because I think a lot of people could easily step away and say, like I said before, I don't want to do this anymore. And they could close their heart and they could shelter it and they could say, I'm just angry. I'm more angry now. No, now the time is to open up and love more and accept the fact that some people just don't know. And now those that don't know have to accept the fact that they need to ask the question. And then collectively, we need to accept the fact that we need to work together.
Yep. Well, that's the reset, right? I mean, hopefully, I know I can only really speak for myself and my family. And just ironically, this is 70 days ago, the world's going berserk. I said, you know what? This feels like it's going to be really weird and strange and heavy for a while. And the one thing I did is and the regular listener knows, I love my nightly cocktail. And I said, I'm going to be done for a while. Because and most people went the other way, which fair play. Hey, we're stuck at home. Shit, let's get drunk. Everybody, let's do a Zoom call, get drunk together. And I just said, which is fine, but I just thought, I just kind of want to make sure I'm as sharp as I can be. And it led to your point, just this eye-to-eye contact and conversation with my children or with my better half, Anna. It was, boy. And by the way, I don't like sitting too close to people at restaurants. So when they reopen and you don't have to sit close to anybody, it's like all of it.
You're happy about that?
Yeah. It's like people look at me like, you're such an asshole. You probably invented this thing. You're the guy that hates bad or whatever they say. But it's just that reset for us. And look, I was a few minutes late for this. But we had a terrible day here at the Armstrong house. My daughter, she's had this little hamster for 2 years, and the damn thing, she had some friends come over this morning. They're like, let's play with the hamster. I go down. He's just gone. And so it was awful. So you have one of the, no, I know, Speedy. This thing was so fast. It was, it was like
sorry
that
to hear that.
Speedy, the dwarf hamster. But so he died, which is sad, but it's just, I don't know. I handled that situation, that conversation differently than I would have in a different mindset with different clarity. And so before we hopped on here, what we love to do, which will get, is the best part, is when it comes to fruition, what we love to do is I love Legos. I love Legos, even pre any of this. I love sit down and do Legos. So Olivia,
have you watched Lego Master?
Every Lego thing ever.
No, the TV show.
No.
You haven't watched Lego Master?
No, I guess I need
come on.
I know.
It's arguably one of the best shows. It was only the first season. It's fantastic, but exactly what you're talking about. My son and I, we do and play Lego all the time. And whether it's the Technicas, which are the cars, a little bit more complicated, or maybe just more of the simple block structure. I don't even know all the terms. But it's a great opportunity to kind of sit down, and I get what you're talking about. Spending that time with your family
and just team up on that thing, and it just, for me, that reset, our reset is that's because we've done Legos for years, right? And it's it feels different now, which I don't know.
Because here's the thing. So you said you stopped drinking, to sort of add more clarity. Now I will say that I still have a couple drinks.
There you go.
I enjoy my beverage and cocktail, and I got a lot of stress that happens, So sometimes I like to wind down. But the thing that I've done more of, and I've tailored my drinking, because I think that there was that first week when you got into the pandemic, you're like, let's have a happy hour Zoom, and then you would end up doing Zoom hopping. Right. And so maybe your first Zoom would be bourbon, your second Zoom would be tequila, and your last Zoom would be beer. Right. So then I stopped doing that, because I think a little bit of what you're talking about, you want to have that clarity. But then I also started working out a lot more, because I needed to do that personal reset. I keep hearing this theme that we're talking about in terms of reset. I had to reset my mind and say, okay, I'm going to drink less, but I'm going to work out more. And so one of the things that I got together with some of my friends, and so every morning on actually just Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we do our 52 card workout. And I don't know if you've ever tried it, but it's one of the best workouts. No, it's Ray Lewis. It's Ray Lewis's workout. It's actually 54 cards, but it's called the 52 card workout. And so like every suit is a different exercise. And the number on that card or the face card is a so if you have a 2 of spades, those spades for that week would be lunges. So you would do 2 lunges. And then if you pull the next card of 5 of hearts, that hearts would be squats. So you would do 5 squats. And if the next card you pull is a jack of diamonds, you do, 15 V-ups. And if you pull the ace of clubs, you do 25 jumping jacks. And so every card has its not only the workout, but also the number. And then you hit a joker and you do 52 push-ups. And so like the way that it gets better over time is that, this is also a part of this notion of community, and also this reset is that you bring other people to the table in order to keep yourself accountable. And then you start to negotiate between each other how you can get better. And so not only do what we do is we start to make, instead of the face cards be 15, we might double those to being 30. And we might take the ace, which is 25, and make it 50. And then we might do the workout, and we might have like a 20 pound or 25 pound medicine ball that you have to hold the entire time, no matter what the exercise. You can't put it on the ground until the entire workout is over. So that's part of like my physical reset. And then also I've been cycling just to get my mind free, right? So being at home all the time, sure, it's great to be out there and play some golf. It's good to go out there and just like have some fun with the kids, but it's even better it's just as much fun to get on the road with some friends and go 30, 40 miles and just see what everybody else is doing. And one of the things I was doing during staying at home, I was helping Stand Together raise some money for Give Together Now. I don't know if you saw that. And we raised $62 million. And I was doing
during the pandemic, and I see that you got the framed over and then I saw some of the interviews you were doing.
Right. So we raised $62 million. And one of our donors, which is amazing, they gave $2.5 million. And all they wanted to see were acts of kindness. All they wanted to see were people being nice to others, and they would pass along $500. And if you've seen it, we raise money for those that were financially affected due to COVID-19. But on my bike rides, I would start to see these acts of kindness, right? And so all these different resets that are happening, as much as the kids will remember, I know we'll remember them as well as we've gotten better, not only gain clarity, but gain comfort in the fact that there is change.
Yep. And right. And that's, as an athlete, you're an athlete, I'm an athlete, or we were athletes.
No, we're still athletes. Come on.
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
You can get out there and do a century tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't go to training camp anymore. I don't do, the specific tailored training that's a part of a process which builds you to this place, which is hopefully part of a result that you all sought to get to. And this is, again, back to this theme of process and progress. And these are amazing stories. I just want it, and you want it. We all, most of us, most normal, rational, want it to stick. We want the result, right? We want the podium. We want the ring. We want the whatever the hell they're giving away. And it's unprecedented.
But I think we're also forced to think about what that ring and what that podium really looks like.
Yes, absolutely.
And how many people really need to be up there with us, or do we really need the podium at all? And we just really need to lift other people up so that they can stand above us. I mean, I there's that visual of the big boss, male or female, whomever it is, kind of standing on top of the mountain, and then, which is the way that I think a lot of people have looked at things. And now there's the picture of the boss holding people up like this, right? Where you're more of the foundation, and you're allowing even, those that have the least amount of responsibility to feel as though they have the greatest responsibility. I think that is the new definition of this podium, or this ultimate championship that we all wish to attain, is that we realize, it's like, I had to bring the University of Michigan into it, right?
Oh yeah, but I want to get to this because I actually have some good. I'm not all that good, but I have some questions about Michigan football.
Lloyd Carr always talks about it's not about you; it's about something greater than yourself, right? And that's what he gave to us as a team and gave to me as a person in '97 when we won the national championship. And that was another movement and moment in time where things ultimately came together. And that's why it's so difficult to do in any sport or any competition. Everything has to be just right. And I don't take that lightly. Right. Sometimes things don't work out the way that you want, and that's ultimately because it wasn't the right time.
Right.
And let's
hope it's the right time.
Yeah. And now it's the right time.
Yeah. Speaking of football, I've just followed this story, and I love football. Football is my favorite sport to watch, and I actually prefer to watch college football. But and of course, the Colin Kaepernick situation over years. This has been going on years, right? Homeboy was ahead of his time. Okay. But I'm still fascinated by his story, and now what happens to him, and there's all this. There's always been talk. And of course, he had the workout almost a year ago, and you think? I mean, I'm more just curious, just because I followed the damn story. Does the guy ever play again? I mean, it's hard for any.
I think it's his choice.
Wow. Is he good enough to play again?
I think it's his choice now. I think, I remember the workout, and I don't know what happened.
I know there was all
the thing that's so challenging about our media atmosphere is we don't know who's covering what and who's saying what. And then even now, so our president said he'd like to see him play again. The NFL has said that they like to see him play again. I think it's his choice. And what I mean by that is he has a platform of advocacy right now. And I think in some ways, football was a part of what propelled him to this position. You're right. I don't know if he knew how far it would take him, but now he knows where he is. And I believe that does the game continue to be as important as his voice?
Right.
And that is really the choice that I'm talking about. Does he have the athletic ability? People have come back. Gronkowski's coming back. People have come back. You can work yourself back into shape. And if anything, he's given his body a chance to recover and take a break. But the choice is his platform, his voice, his reach, the moment that he has now in time to be the leader that we need and to be on the dais of other leaders that have now stepped up, to stand next to the LeBron James of the world, to stand next to the Tracy Maitlands and the Robert Smiths of the world, to stand next to the John Boyega of the world, and to take the megaphone and lead the next generation that is now listening, and to sit down and talk to the generation that is now wondering, right? That's the choice that I think he sits with, and I hope that he continues to lead, and I hope he continues to bring about a message, because Nike was one of the first company that stepped up and followed him and stuck with him, right? Think how much that speaks volumes about that company and that team and that leadership and all of those that are a part of that. So he has a choice, and I hope he makes a choice.
Yeah,
he definitely has a tough choice.
Well, because I just know how weird some people are. Let's just say he can play. He's good enough to make it. To be signed to play, and he's the backup somewhere, which probably maybe or probably will be. And I'm just making this up. He comes in, first pass throws an interception. Then people are going to be like, see. I mean, that's how we like. Then I'll, part of them like forget the whole idea, forget the significance, because you just threw an interception. So it's, and that will happen, which is stupid. So he does have a choice. He's very, he doesn't say a lot. I mean, his persona is much bigger than, you don't see him talking. You don't see him out there doing interviews. He's just, which I think is powerful. That silence is powerful. And going out and throwing an interception would not be silent. You'd have all these fools going, see what I told you so. It was bullshit.
But I think would be amazing, even if that were to happen, would be those that were also in the stands saying, I bet the next time he won't throw an interception. Right. And I think this also speaks to sort of the culture we live in nowadays, where we're always, nitpicking.
Oh God.
And we're always finding the worst sometimes versus the best. And I think that's also part of this reset, where we're trying to look at, we're trying to fix things for the better. And so if I was in the stands and I would hear someone say that, I would be the one that was supporting and say, well, let's give him an opportunity to perform. And I hope he's able to do that. And I hope he's able to make that choice, because it's probably going to be one of the tougher decisions. And, and I've met Colin a couple of times. I've heard him speak a couple of times. The way that he works and those that he works with, he stays very close to them, very intentional about the time he spends and the places that he goes, because he knows that the world is watching and he has responsibility, which ultimately makes the choice that much more difficult. But there are other people in the National Football League, like the Malcolm Jenkins of the world, like the Anquan Boldens of the world, that are doing things through the Player Coalition. And, I mentioned earlier, that we were talking about all the other organizations that are contributing money in the NFL. Now they're going to contribute $250 million, $250 million to social justice. right? That doesn't happen without the Colin Kaepernicks of the world. That doesn't happen without the Malcolm Jenkins and Anquan Boldens and the player coalitions of the world. That doesn't happen without the moments that have these momentums that create these movements. So all of that, right? And so I just, as much as my heart breaks in the morning, my heart is healed by time and conversation. And the more we spend time, the more things will become better. And as we kind of, I can't wait to see what you title this. It's title it The Reset. As much as we'll find all this reset, I just look forward to to what happens.
Well, it is the reset, and you touched on something I think is real, and what's how sports impact our lives, how sports in a lot of ways give us meaning. And to your point of just this moment in time, this massive justified debate over where we are with race in this country on the heels of the pandemic. If in this idea that, imagine if there's not college football, right? That's just, I'd go crazy. But whether it's watching Michael Phelps win a gold medal, standing up there with the medal, hand over his heart, the national anthem, like that, Americans sit at home and they're like, okay, they could have had a lot of things happen that day. It just all of a sudden, it was a good day. It was a good night. And sports do that for us. And so, boy, it all mixes in the same place. You brought up, like, boy, maybe more than ever, actually, do we need that, right? And if this community and if this process that we're going through is robbed of that, right, which is beyond our control, I think it's a serious miss. And again, totally out of our control. But we got to have that moment. I want to see how Drew Brees reacts when his entire team takes a knee. I want to see. Like I have to. Drew found out really fast. Very fast.
Very fast.
Unbelievable.
Very, very fast. I think.
I think we need those moments. I think we need.
No, we definitely need those moments. But the thing is, Drew found out really fast, and a lot of other people will find it really fast. Gundy, he's finding out very, very fast as well, right? There's a lot of people that are finding out really fast. And what I'm going to be curious about is not only just now, right, but in a 1 year's time or 5 years' time, everybody's still going to be watching. And what they say now as it relates back to what their teammates are telling them, will it stick, right? So that's what I want to make sure, right? And hold people accountable for not only the mistakes that they made, but a perspective that they now have found and a new life that they must lead. And that's also the responsibility of the community. That's also the responsibility of sports, because in the locker room, that's where we all will be held accountable. And now this world is starting to hold us all accountable. I mean, you can't say anything, you can't do anything without other people watching and evaluating you. And this goes back to the young people. Yep. They've now put sort of the lens on people to make sure that, okay, you said this, all right, now you're almost in like a probationary period. It's like, okay, now we're watching. And so I hope Drew is able to learn, as I think he has, and the locker room will keep him accountable. And if he says other things, I know that it not only will be the locker room, it will also be the fans, and it'll also be a new community that has set a new standard for the way that we all need to be better as people.
Well, this is what this is what I just hope we don't miss. I think sports have they play such a serious part in our lives. And aside from the game, we love it, but it is just, it's in our DNA. And, I can just think of, look at NASCAR, right? Banning Confederate flags at the track. I mean, they're back racing. That is a huge move. You keep playing out. I mean, the NBA comes back, they play it in Disneyland, whatever. LeBron, I don't know. LeBron James comes out in a George Floyd jersey. It doesn't even say LeBron or James. I mean, NFL is able to resume play. Roger Goodell comes out and takes a knee. I mean, these are all, and again, this is sort of bringing it full circle. That I just selfishly, as an American, as a sports fan, I can think of all these moments, whether it's Phelps or Cap or any of these are things I never forget these things because I love sports, and a lot of us love sports. And so and all the while this is mixed and mingled with the pandemic that is beyond our control. So I just don't want to, I'm not saying any of those things are going to happen. Obviously strong move on NASCAR's part, the PGA Tour leaving that tee time open. That needs to happen forever. I don't want to miss it. Just selfishly, I don't want to miss it.
Oh, the world won't let you miss it.
Yeah.
The world won't let you miss it. It's too much of an important moment in time. And Darryl Bubba Wallace Jr., he's a friend of mine, and I'm proud of him. I mean, he is the only. I remember when he was still trying to look for sponsors, and I was trying to help him.
Yeah. And
I was telling people, it's like, Bubba Wallace, Darryl Bubba Wallace Jr. But remember, who in motocross? What was Bubba Stewart?
Bubba Stewart. He was a badass.
Where's Bubba Stewart? We need Bubba Stewart too.
And his young brother is a badass too.
Right. So, but I'm so proud of them and what Cullen Jones in swimming.
Yep.
So they're through these times as more lead in a way that those are willing to follow with a message that resonates and a feeling that people are unapologetic about. There'll be more that go into the world of sports that will take a knee in order to stand for the injustices of this world in order to make it better. And sports will remind us about that all the time until forever. And I look forward to that, because sports is important to me, right?
Yeah.
This is what's important to you.
And by the way, Bubba Wallace, for those who don't know, I mean, this is the only African-American NASCAR driver at the highest level. But when I think of him, I think of courage. I mean, here's a guy, and we all have days, we all have moments you're a little bummed out. This is a guy who deals with depression. And that sport, you think of those people out there, some of them with Confederate flags in the old days, you think they won't hear about some African-American dude that's got depression? I mean, he's straight up said, I suffer from depression. I mean, the stones that it took him to admit that and freely talk about that whenever, not just like, I'm going to talk about it, never ask me again. He's like, no, open door. And I mean, that is that,
Well, here's the thing. It takes even that much greater effort because of the fact that a lot of people in the African-American community don't really talk about mental health.
Right.
I did a panel and I was on with Randy Jackson and I was interviewed by a friend of mine. And the entire subject matter was Black health, Black mental health. And part of the things I talked about is how within the African-American community, it's almost seen as a sign of weakness in some ways, shape or form, to sort of admit that you're not okay. And in some ways, it's also part of the conversation that's never had, because we're talking about other things, but we're not talking about things that are going on in our life. And that was the point of the conversation, is because we need to be able to bring those things to the forefront. I mean, there's a lot of things we need to be able to bring to the forefront. But for Bubba to do that, that said a lot about him as a man, and said a lot about him as a person, and also said a lot about where we are in our society, where we're now, going back to what we were saying, able to sort of open up and be more comfortable with admitting some of the things that are not necessarily perfect with our life. And so as more people like Bubba speak up and speak out about that, and others, I mean, Randy Jackson, he was talking about at his heaviest, he was like over 350 pounds.
You seen this cat now? He pops up on my ads at the bottom of my.
He was like this, and now he's like this.
No, he's half a man. He's half a man.
But his mental health was connected to his physical health.
Of course.
Right. And so we all need to sort of understand, how do we get to a better mental place so that we can physically get to a more sustainable place. And then we can actually see those sports through to those momentous occasions when you see the entire team take a knee, or you see the entire stand for those that are taking a knee.
That's right. And that's the end result. That's what I'm talking about, the progress. Can I just shift gears just a sec? Because I'm actually, I told you I love college football, and obviously being a kid from Texas and most of my life in Austin, University, Texas football is near and dear. But we got to talk about Michigan, and I want to talk about.
I interviewed Sonia Richards Ross. She was a track star over at UT. So yeah, so I just want to give you a shout out. You have some good people coming out of your school.
We have good people. I read today.
It's not Michigan, but I mean, you also got some good people.
Oh, stop it right now. I read, speaking of this pandemic, I got the news alert today. 27% of our football team is positive for COVID. So this is, and my son who's at Rice they're back. They start 2-a-days tomorrow. So, I speaking of mental health, I worry about America's mental health.
Are you nervous
for him?
Yeah,
of course. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It's like, how the game is played. This is not, we're not.
Did you have a choice in whether he would report or not?
He didn't ask me, but I mean, obviously I'm sure, I don't know if the coaches gave the kids a choice. We had a choice. I had a choice whether or not he ever played football, which is a whole nother 5-hour conversation. I had a choice whether or not he went to go play college football. But that's scary. It's a hands-on game. They don't play it on Zoom. They play it. There's contact. And so, yeah. But we can talk about that more, but I got to get back to Michigan football, because I'm not sure, and I'm just going to go out on a limb here. And I like Jim Harbaugh. I'm not sure that's going to work. I'm not sure that's the fit. I don't know why. And I don't know anything. You're not saying anything. This is great. Okay, cool. Great conversation about Michigan football. Is he don't tell me he's your best friend.
No, I'm a supporter of Harbaugh.
Okay.
I'll break it down like this, that there was an article written about statistically how his success has been measured against other coaches. And I think he's either the second or the third best performing coach in the school's history.
Right. But guys like that if they don't win the national championship, and or a clear view.
Let me throw something else out. If we look back 10 years, over the last 10 years, and we were to go through, or the last 20 years, and we were to go through the rankings and where teams had been and where they are now, like where University of Miami is or was, and Tennessee is or was, or UT is and was, and Michigan is and was, all these different schools. Michigan hasn't really changed, where so many other universities have fallen by the wayside. So let's get into the data of success, right? And then let's not only look at the winning percentage over time. And let's also look at the position of the school over time. Let's also look at the changing climate of college football and the portal. Let's look at, where visibility and where people want to go. I mean, there's so many different let's just say extracurriculars that go with the game of college football right now. I'm excited that our school remains an elite university, because we always have been and we always will be now and into the future. I'm excited about the way that our team has come together, and we've fought through so much controversy, and as the way that people look at Michigan. Now, yet we haven't won the game that we all want to win. And I'll tell you this, I think the most amount of time that we beat that team down south consistently, I think was 10 years. And they're at 9, I think, roughly, give or take 1 or 2 games. So we're still within our right now. People are ultimately not happy about that. I'm not happy about that either. I want to be able to win that game. And that's ultimately will put us into a better place where we feel better, and that will reset. Right. So I mean, like I said, I like Harbaugh, and on the others, you look at the flip side. I mean, I would measure him up against a lot of other coaches that are out there, and I would take him.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I don't like him. I'm sure I liked him as a player. I think he was a great coach in the NFL and in the NFL. I just know how it works. So you get these boosters, you get the border regions, and there is some, call it a grace period, call it whatever period of time, where you could be top 5 for 10 years, and those people just go, wait a minute, I got to watch another Alabama national championship. Seriously? Like, why can't we just have Nick Saban? Like, that's the way they think in Austin.
Right.
I mean, when they let go of Mac Brown, brought in Charlie Strong, and then Charlie let go of Charlie. I mean, all the buzz about, well, we're going to hire Nick Saban, and we're going to pay him $10 million a year. And I mean, it's just that's what they're talking about.
There's only one Nick Saban out there. And plus, even if Nick Saban decided to go somewhere else, doesn't mean he's going to have the same amount of success that he has right now. So
True.
We can say we won. I mean, everybody thinks that Tom Brady is going to have an incredible amount of success down in Tampa as he did in New England. I'm friends with Tom. I like Tom. Tom's a great quarterback. He's arguably the GOAT. But it's a completely different situation when you go down to Tampa. It's a completely different ownership structure when you go down to Tampa. It's a completely different community. It's a completely different team. You can't create a connectivity. It has to develop a life of its own. That's what's so beautiful about that. Right.
Well,
and he had that when he was in New England. Will he have that in Tampa Bay? We have yet to see. Now, everybody would want, to your time, everybody would want to speculate on the amount of time and grace period in order to be able to get there. But just let's be honest, the chemistry that they had at New England, it's really hard to recreate. And that's why it's so hard for teams to really be able to go back to the Super Bowl so many times over. And it's the same thing. Like Michigan, just like any other school, we want to all go back to the national championship, but it doesn't always happen. Saban, if he went to UT, I don't know if he get to the national championship, because the situation is ultimately not the same. That's why it comes back to this moment, right? And the movement and the momentum that has to be created. That all creates that environment where things just happen, right? And it doesn't matter what period or what thing, it all has to align up perfectly.
My point, it better happen, right? I mean, it may not happen. You just brought up Tom Brady.
I want it to happen.
We may not know. I mean, we can talk about Tom Brady. You and I could talk about Tom Brady forever. And if it doesn't happen, then we're not going to know, which is, if it doesn't, that's my point. If it doesn't happen, I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to be bummed. And I'm going to be ripped off. Damn Corona ripped me off of knowing all these things. And more importantly, having these moments that just reinforce the process that gets us hopefully to progress that we're working on it. So enough of that. All right. You're a Harbaugh guy. I got it. I like him. I remember I'll never forget this. Cause I say this stupid shit all the time. Cause these Zooms, I hate being on the video all the time. I always just talk. People are like, what? You're just going to talk? I'm like, yeah, I'm having a bad hair day. So he used to do these interviews. Like he wouldn't take his helmet off. And the reporters.
When was this?
This is when he was playing. He'd be sitting in the locker room with his helmet on.
Oh, okay.
And they say, you're not gonna take your helmet off. No, I'm having a bad hair day. I just think that's funny. Like, who says shit like that after the game? Like, I like that. Like, I like that kind of humor. Before we go, I want to talk about cycling, because you brought up cycling, but I want to take it and we can talk about how you enjoy the bike. But have you followed or how aware are you of the Major Taylor story? Because we got to talk about you and me. We can do it offline, but
I'm not as aware of the Major Taylor story as I need to be.
Yep.
I think there was an ad that
he's on, like a Hennessy ad.
He was a Hennessy ad in terms of chasing the rabbit.
Yeah.
Right. And then what happened was my son, we found these flashcards of amazing African-American leaders in different sports. And Major Taylor is one of the guys that he memorized first, because my son loves riding bikes. And so that's how I got to know his story. I'm embarrassed that I don't know the entire story, but a guy like him, Major Taylor, like that story needs to be told just as much as the Nigel Sylvester stories.
This story, right? Dhani, we got to talk offline. This has to be a major motion picture. This man's story, he raced 100 years ago, and he raced at a game. By the way, cycling 100 years ago was actually pretty popular in the United States, obviously globally, Europe, Australia, Asia, very popular. Believe me, there were no no black people racing. Promise. Mm-hmm. The hurdles and the stuff that he overcame 100 years ago. I mean, when I think of, and I'm just going to get on my box here, because I want this movie to be made, and I'd be happy to make it. I think it's a little tricky. Cycling's hard to portray in a movie. I remember you watched Seabiscuit, and that dude Tobey Maguire. I mean, Seabiscuit is a great horse, but when you're, that's not the way horse racing looks.
Right.
So, but you got to get that right. But here's a man who, and I just think of sort of the teaser. It's before Jackie, before Cassius, before Michael, before Tiger, before it was Major. It's a double meaning. It was Major. He dominated he was the most dominant and famous athlete in the world. And it is truly a tragic story.
Jack Johnson,
and he died broke, and he died with nothing. And that story now more than ever. And of course I'm biased because I love cycling. I love the bike. I love what it represents. I love where two wheels take you. This man's story is and I'm telling you, and I'm telling all the people listening.
Well, look, it sounds like we have something to do.
Yes. No, I
mean, I think right now is the time for those stories to be told, of those that have done or been the first before others had been the first. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think there's another gentleman, Matt Cherry, who just got a extended deal with Warner Brothers. Right. And, television and media also have a responsibility, but you have to have the people in the room to do the work to find the stories, right? Because, does art reflect life, or life reflect art, right? We as people reflect, and we create the art that reflects the life.
Yeah.
So we the life that we need the people in the room in order to be able to create the story. So the Major Taylor story, we got to have someone that's sitting there at Warner Brothers or Fox Searchlight or any of these other networks or these other productions that says on the lot that, you know what, the Major Taylor story is important. And that's another follow-up that Obama is talking about. A follow-up one is in politics. Another follow-up is in the world of finance. Another follow-up is in the world of business. And another follow-up is in the world of media. And another in media, subcontext of that is the world of television drama, because, it's amazing. My son learned about Black Lives Matter on Disney Junior. On Disney Junior. Right. So, and the fact that Disney is able to put an ad, or not even an ad, just be able to communicate a message. I think we should change the word ad, be able to communicate a message to young people, and now force parents to have, not force, maybe force is the wrong word. Maybe it's allow parents to have an engaged conversation with their child, right, about important moments. We need all of the platforms to align, and we need all of the people that are even working in the world of advertising to look at the Aunt Jemimas of the world and to change them, right? So that the Major Taylor stories can be told, and so that the positive images, I'm so happy about that TV show Cops got canceled. And, the show Law and Order and new shows that are coming up, the way that people are looking at Black and brown faces that are on TV and overwhelmingly sort of positioned as, let's just call it, quote, the bad guy. There are psychological aspects of this story that we need to fundamentally shift, so that when we look on television, we can both celebrate and applaud those that are positive role models, much like we see people like Obama, and much like we see people like LeBron James do commencement addresses, and Leland Melvin go to outer space, and Tiger Woods come back and win the Masters, and Major Taylor. We need to bring all those to light and to life in real time.
And you brought up Robert Smith. I mean, here's a man who's
Robert Smith.
I mean, come on. I mean, that's I don't care if you're green. That's one of the smartest guys. One of the most impressive and correct dude. He lives in Austin now, so I spent a little bit of time with Robert. He's guys like that, guys and gals like that. Yeah. Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah, I mean, I remember meeting Robert Smith, and if you see him next time, tell him, I'd love to continue talking to him, because he's been such an inspiration to me. I remember I met him at a cultural leadership conference. It was either, I think it was JP Morgan or Morgan Stanley, one of the two, and it was and he was there, and I just walked right up to him and said, "Hey, I'd love to learn from you." And he was like, here's my email, here's my card, message me anytime. It was a Morgan Stanley event. And he couldn't have been more gracious. But the challenge that I'm sure he has, and guys like John Rogers and guys like Tracy Maitland, and even guys like Frank Baker, I can kind of go down the line of all the different people, African-American leaders in different financial sectors, is that there's so few that their emails get backlogged with so many people that want to reach out. And that's what's also a part of this conversation and this dialogue, is how others that now see the power and the change that needs to occur can also step in and be those mentors and be those supporters of those that are trying to get into new industries where there's not a lot of participation, so that they too can be supported in order to graduate to the level where they can bring other people on board. And so we keep talking about this reset. It's the collective reset of all of us, where we can reset our mind so that in time we can have more to, if I'm keep going down this poetic line, shine, and that we can all look back and say, wow, that was a great moment in time.
Right.
Woo! Did you see what I just did?
Man, we did it.
I couldn't even do that before. I couldn't even bring that poem back. I hope you transcribe this and just give me that back.
You get all the credit. Speaking of reset, I mean, and speaking of Robert Smith, imagine being a kid at was it Morehouse, or where did you get Morehouse? And these kids, I don't know how many kids graduating, but let's just call it hundreds and hundreds, maybe 1,000. They're sitting there going, "Oh man, this is so cool! I'm graduating. It's going to take me. I'm gonna be working this off for 10 years, maybe more." Homeboy just stands up like, "Nope, I got it.
I got you."
I mean, imagine that reset. Like, wait, whoa! What did you just say?
I would pass.
I would be crying. You'd be mopping me out of that fucking place. I promise you. I mean,
well, look, he set a precedent, and Frank Baker came in, and he contributed as well. And then Reed Hastings over at Netflix, he came in, and he made a I think it's $140 million dollar gift. A lot of money, and that's where the leadership ultimately comes. It's the top down, but it's also in the realization that people have been given an opportunity to do something, and and sometimes I was talking to another one of my friends, and as you can tell, I talk to a lot of people on the phone, but this guy was talking about how his granddaughter forced him to think differently. Right. And so that you never know where the influence is coming from. And I think that's also great about this transparent world we live in, is that now we're able to take more seriously those that are around us, because, maybe the inherent aspect of distrusting allows us to engage in a more trusting way with alternative resources. And even those alternative resources that we fundamentally did not, maybe in the past would not have paid attention to, now we actually have a closer connectivity to, and we actually believe it.
Right.
And so that's also a great moment in time that's happening right now. That's giving people a place to say, okay, I'm gonna change because I'm just listening in a different way. So I can only imagine the young person that's sitting in the audience that had a $30,000, $40,000, $100,000 student loan, that all of a sudden the next day they looked at their bank account and it was just completely wiped out.
Yeah, and
they can start fresh. And that's that equal playing field that the African-American community talks about. I don't know if you've seen the YouTube video of the guy who has all the people lined up on the line, and, he has the $100 and he says, everybody, you're going to line up, and the first person gets to me is going to, I think, get the $100. I'm probably telling it really bad, but he said he's going to ask everybody a question before they race. And he asked, do you come from a 2-parent household? Have you ever had to fight for your food? Have you ever, worried about where your next meal is going to come from? Have you ever, been, subjected to in any level of injustice? He kept asking all these questions, and you start to see the audience of people start to separate. And I invite everybody to just look on YouTube. I think it's like I think it's called the greatest story in, I can't remember.
I need you to send me the link. I got to see this.
But it's an amazing video. And what ultimately happens is he's talking about the head start people have had in life. The head start in your life has been determined by your circumstances, by the community and the people that have ultimately been around you, and the instances in life that have essentially held you back. And so in Robert Smith's case, and him footing the bill, now you're up a little bit closer. You're still so far behind that you have to catch up, but at least you get another opportunity if you can just work to potentially, but there's still so much room in between that when we talk about how you need to change the media, you don't change the advertising and everything else. We need to move it more closely so that everybody is on the same playing field. And what does that do? That just makes the entire world better. That just makes all of us, that makes people better.
Yeah. It's all about what base you're on, right? What base, right? We all think we start, or some people, what base you on? Like, how can you advance from second to third, whatever base, you know? A lot of people born on third base think they hit a triple. A bunch of bullshit. Let me just leave you with one thing, and it's not a question. I'm just going to tell you something. And this is years ago. This is, you know my story. Everybody listening knows my story. And I don't know where it sits in this culture now, but it's a just straight up hero to zero, right? Let's just call it what it is. And this was, I don't remember what Super Bowl it was. We went to the Super Bowl, and it was one of those parties, Super Bowl parties everywhere. But it was close enough to the fall that, we were there, and I was with my kids and my family, and there was a lot of people there. And it was like, and it's still this kind of cooties factor where it's like, everybody's like, oh man, I don't know if I should. And I don't know if you remember this or not. I will never forget it the rest of my life. And this is why you're my friend and you're my brother. You sprinted across that room and gave me the biggest hug and said, it is so good to see you. When I see people's faces, right? It's like, oh man, I don't know. You didn't care. And you ran across that room, and my kids saw, my family, everybody saw. And for that, I will, Dhani, I will never, ever, ever forget it. And just as a nobody is ever in a place where they don't need that, right? And I'm smart enough and aware enough of a room. I knew it was up. I knew what people were, looking and going. And that walk that you made across that room and that hug, I mean, there's stuff like that changes your life. And so, again, don't know if you remember that, but it was very, very special to me, and never forget it.
Love you, brother.
Love you too. Thanks for doing this. You have homework. Okay. You have one bit of homework.
Taylor.
No, that's going to be, I hope that's our homework. This has to be the homework. I want that YouTube link, and I'll share it with the listeners and the viewers. Our homework, and then we can pull in Robert, we can pull in Maverick Carter. There's no way it doesn't happen. If we have to do it, that's our homework. Okay. Can we commit to that right now?
I can commit to it.
And we're on the hook. Everybody listening, watch right now.
Matter of fact, we could be extras in the movie.
No problem. A couple gray-headed dudes, that was 100 years ago. I don't know what we'd be wearing, but yeah. Hell yeah.
I would love to see that movie created. That would be amazing. I think there's going to be a lot of movies, and a lot of stories. And while in some people's minds, movies are fantasy, I just hope everybody knows that this is reality.
Well, that's this is the best stories are the true stories, and this is a forgotten story. So the ability to remind and to resurface and to elevate, that's the best story. And so we're on it. You got I remember that. I remember that hug, man. I'm just letting you know. I was letting you know. I remember it. I love my friends. Right. No, I got
you. Period.
I know that, and yeah.
And I love my friends. Period.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep. All right, bro. Thanks for doing this.
Of course.
Okay.
I appreciate you having me.